Well, a very warm hello and welcome back to the channel. And I'm just enjoying a fairly slow running fuel and lubricant oil train. These Hornby 00 wagons look great in their various liveries, and I've had to call upon a bit of help. We've got another class 31 helping the one from the last video, because it's not power that's the problem, it's grip. And even with the Magnesian, one loco just won't pull all these wagons. Now the green class 31 has got an Airfix 5-pole armature in it as well, from the 1001 motor 1001. This was a conversion I did a long time ago, so I had to extend the armature shaft for the second worm, unlike the blue version that I did the other week, which has an armature with a much longer shaft. But both of these I think are wound the same, and they run really well in tandem. I just don't want to put away the blue class 31 at the moment, so I think I'll find a few more jobs for it on the layout. Now the subject of this week's video, and there it is. Can you guess what year and what manufacturer made this particular version of the rebuilt Royal Scot class, Royal Scot in BR livery, running number 46100? Well, it isn't mainline, it is indeed Airfix, and it's Airfix model number 54121. And I only got this a couple of days ago, so I thought I'd make a video on it because it's an extraordinarily good item. Now, my brother and I enjoyed a trip to our local model shop in Northampton, a rare visit to that wonderful emporium, just to check out some of the newer locos and look at all the detail and the features available today. And they don't normally have a second-hand table, but I'm glad they did, because once I got looking at the price tickets on some of the lovely new locos, not only breaking through £200 but also £300, it just showed me that today's hobby is indeed not to be trifled with financially. A lot of money required to build up a good stable of locos. Now this one on the second-hand table had a £25 ticket on it, and when I offered 20 thinking I'd be rejected, it was accepted almost instantly. So I think the proprietor might have been prepared for an even greater drop, but £20. So this loco that you're looking at here, for a crisp £20 plastic banknote, was it worth it? Well, I hope I'm going to prove to you that it was. I've got some Hornby LMS style coaches ready to couple up, but before I do, I thought we'd go onto the workbench and I'll just show you inside the tender drive unit. I mean, we've got a lot of plastic in this model. There's a few things to look out for, I think, if you buy one or run one. But look at the detail. I mean, it certainly compares well with Hornby and earlier Triang Hornby models. And as I said again, £20. And I have looked online, and there's plenty of these available for similar prices. So whether you love or hate tender drive, just give this model a chance. Right, we'll go over to the bench and take a quick look at a couple of features on it, and then we'll be back at the layout to see how it performs. Okay, well, I've gone ahead and started disassembling this loco to give you a look, and I've removed the rear buffer beam and the screw from the tender part of the drawbar, because that, and I'll just use my microfiber cloth on the tender top because it is a bit worn. That is how it's held on. So we've got the screw going through the drawbar, and this end you can see two little cracks where the plastic possibly has dried out. So one of the disadvantages of vintage plastic is it does tend to change over the years. Hopefully not as bad as the acetate that are in lots of the lovely Triang models that you've seen on the channel, but definitely an element of brittleness. Now, if I just move the tender top out of the way and lay that on its side, we can just have a quick look on the bottom. And there, Airfix products, 1977, made in Hong Kong. Now, I haven't had the top off the Loco. I tested the continuity of the pickups. The wheels move a lot, but that's great for going around tight radiuses. But the valve gear is free, so I just thought there's no need for me to take the top off. One thing I have noticed, if you turn the model upside down, always make sure that this particular part of the valve gear hasn't gone up past, almost past its stop, because if you try and push it now, you'll bend it because it's resting against the frame. So when the Loco's the correct way up, just bear in mind this particular link needs to be hanging down. So, still got the wires connecting the tender drive, and there's a huge heavy weight, and down here, I'm not taking the weight off, we've got two brush holders. Now they're the type where, like Rinfield motors, a very small spring but quite springy and a very small brush, but there is a hole in the brush holder, and when you go to put them together you need a little bit of cotton, push it through the hole, through the spring, and then when you push the carbon brush into the holder it's all secure, and you can then put the holder back into the motor, withdraw the piece of cotton to free off the brush. Any other way and you'll be spending an afternoon either on your workshop floor or train room floor looking for brush springs and brushes. Now the other difference, you'll notice that this looks like a far smaller motor than the Hornby motor. It is, and I suppose that is good because the Hornby motor made very high cold lows necessary. This one doesn't need them. What we have got though inside the motor is a primary reduction gear, and then from that it goes down to the normal gears, rather like on a Hornby motor. So I think the armature runs at slightly higher revolutions than the Hornby type, but that does give you a bit more flexibility. So these are, I haven't taken it right apart, I just cleaned the brushes. I notice where these screws go in, it looks like the heads have been rounded slightly, someone's had it apart, and there may be cracks forming in the motor casing. So I just used a scratch brush, glass fibre scratch brush, cut it down, and once I got the brushes out I was able just to clean the commutator. Sparing amount of oil, there doesn't seem to be any phosphor bronze bushes at all on the armature shaft, it seems to be straight in the plastic, but just a sparing amount of oil, and double checked that these wires are indeed soldered on nicely. One was a little bit frayed, so I resoldered it, and it was then a running Loco. Now just going to point out this strange little coupling on the back. It might be some sort of Airfix only coupling. It looks like a Nin pocket coupling, but I don't think it is. I'm not going to change it because I've already experimented and I can connect to my Hornby coaches, and it kind of is part of the model and looks nice. So yeah, great looking, lots of detail, lovely handrail, very nice printing on the decals and the nameplate. Quite good flanges. I'm sure these will run on code 100, but not as fine as your modern flanges. Certainly run, yeah, I think it'll run fine on the Super 4. Traction tyres as well. Just quite simple and a lovely looking thing, but delicate and probably quite easy to crack the plastic. So I am going to be a little bit more gentle with this model. Well, I hope you've enjoyed just a quick overview of the inside, how this model looks compared to some of the others available. The valve gear is quite fine. Overall, it's probably almost the start of what could be called a super detail type model. It's got just that little bit of finer detail than what I'm used to with my Hornby 00 and Triang Hornby items, the items you've seen on this channel. The only other repair I did when I got the Loco was the guy very kindly sellotaped the vacuum pipe to a piece of packaging. It had been snapped off the front with a very small amount of super glue. I was able to glue that back on. It is very fragile, as is the back one, but it looks good. And we do have metal safety valves and a metal whistle. Whether they're brass, I don't know, but they are a lovely looking, definitely metal item. And these handrails are really good. We haven't just got split pins here, we've got proper collets. They look correct and go behind the smoke deflectors nicely, and there is some glazing in the cab as well. So all of this for a £20 note seems rather a bargain to me. Now, whether you love or hate tender drives, they are what they are. Very popular during certain parts of model railway history, even right up to relatively recently. The main thing to remember is to check the valve gear, check there's no binding, and then once it's running, you'll really struggle to tell that it has a motor in the tender. Okay, well, I think that's enough of me going on about it. I'm saying it looks like a Loco driven item, so the only way to show you that is probably to get it onto the layout. I'll just get this tender top back on and I'll see you over there in a minute and we'll see how it runs. Okay, well, the Class 31s are still making their way around, and I've got my fingers crossed because no derailment so far. And I'm just going to let them come round the layout and go past the Royal Scot before we attempt to move it away. Bright sun again in the loft. It's nice to get these sunny mornings. Okay, well, as those 31s go by, I am going to just couple this up using my hand, because that funny little coupling is a bit problematic sometimes, and I just want to make sure, yes, that looks like a successful coupling. Right, let's see if I can move away in a nice scale fashion. Just feeding the power in right now. Very responsive on the controller. I'm going to leave it at this slow speed actually. Let's just take a look, because something's happened to my controller and I'm not actually getting an indication for the Class 31s, but the Royal Scot's only drawing about 0.15, 0.16. So that's not too bad, is it? Another job to look at that meter, find out why it's not working. Okay, I'm going to slow these Class 31s right down now, just so we can concentrate on the newer item. I hope you'll agree with me, this is a pretty stunning Loco for a crisp £20 plastic note. I'm very happy with how it's running. I know we're nowhere near to competing with what's available today. It's a different ball game, but for anyone that likes to run railways on a budget or use the older items, this is just such a great loco. I noticed when I was looking online that there's other liveries available too. A pretty impressive black LMS livery, I think, and maybe a crimson one too. But just look at it go. A 1978-1979 loco, I think available right until the demise of Airfix when it comes to model railways. What I might try and do is see if I can get a comparison with a mainline example. I do know my brother has a mainline one, so if he's willing to lend it to me, it might be nice to see the pair of them on the layout together. So just to recap, this rather wonderful looking Airfix loco, which is nice and quiet, certainly as quiet as any Hornby tender drive, and with the extra gears a lot more tractable, lots of flexibility when it comes to the slower running, maybe not quite as much power, but a really good item to have. And I mean, I've always hankered after a Wren Royal Scot. I don't have one in my collection, but when you look at the prices of those items these days, they are very desirable and expensive locos, and this makes a great alternative. Okay, well, I think I'm going to leave you with a little bit of running now. We'll just go back to the controller and have a go at getting the Class 31s running again. So let's take a look at them just emerging from the station. I'm going to feed in the power. Yeah, and indeed they're on the move. Well, I've had a lot of fun running these items today. I think I'll just put a little bit more power on both of them. And I hope you've enjoyed seeing them all too. So what I think I'll do now is just leave you with a bit of running for a couple of minutes. So until the next video, I'll say goodbye.